Hey, everybody. Welcome to Ms.Interpretations. My name is Marin, and this is my virtual campfire. And today we have Dr. Kipp Davis. Kipp, I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, me too. I didn't realize we were having a virtual campfire. I love having campfires. So
Yeah,
this
did you
is
bring the did you
awesome.
bring the s'mores? Did you bring the
I brought
marshmallows and
virtual s'mores. Yes.
Okay,
So
awesome. I have the virtual
I
fire, so we're good to go.
I love cooking marshmallows over the campfire, but I'm not actually a great fan of eating them. So
Same.
it's yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Wild, eh? So
Yeah.
look at
Yeah,
that.
like I'll
So
just
who
maybe
are
use a
we've got
tiny
no
bit.
one we've got no one to eat our virtual marshmallows that we're cooking over our virtual campfire today if neither of us are eating them. So
Yeah, that's true. Well, maybe use a little bit of the marshmallow, but it's mostly the chocolate and the graham cracker for me.
that's all. Yeah, if not
Yeah.
for s'mores, I don't think anybody would eat marshmallows actually,
I
but
Some people love them. Oh my gosh.
ugh.
Like, I used to pick them out of the cereal when I was a
Oh
kid,
god, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, they're
yeah,
the worst things. I
yeah, yeah,
agree.
yeah,
So
it's
look at
terrible,
us. We're like
terrible.
we're like
Right?
we're like kindred spirits.
That's how you eat Lucky Charms. You have to take the
Yeah, yeah,
marshmallows out.
yeah,
No,
the
yeah.
cereal's fine. It's all those
Yeah.
damn marshmallows in it. So,
Absolutely,
ugh,
absolutely. Yeah, well, I call it virtual campfire because humans have been telling stories around the fire, all their ever since we've been around, I
since there
guess,
have
and
been
ever since we
fires.
have fire. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So, always trying to explain why are we here and yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
awesome.
So, wow, I
Let's
am
do it.
so, so glad I'm finally getting to talk to somebody about this because ever since I read this book, God and the Rhetoric of Sexuality by Phyllis Trible, ever since I read that in college, I have wanted to talk to somebody about her treatment of the Genesis creation stories, specifically creating Adam and Eve. And so, but I never learned Hebrew. I hardly learned German, and that was kind of as far as I got as far as language is concerned. But it's the first feminist theology book I ever read, and my first actually first religion class in college was called Basic Christian Ethics, and there was a section on feminist ethics, and so that's how I came across her. So I was like, "Really, will you talk with me about this?" And then you graciously sent me a little bit of what you've been writing for your book that's coming out. You said in September.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
that's the plan.
so exciting. I hope yeah, I can't wait to see that. That's gonna be fantastic, but, um, I mean, I knew that you had, like, worked this out yourself, but I didn't realize that you were writing on that too, so that is really cool. So, so yeah, so let's talk about it a little bit, kind of give the idea. I'll just kinda give you the quick overview of what I, like, said, "Hey, will you wanna talk about this?" Because she wrote this in the early '70s. Her first paper about this was like '73, I think, and
Right.
then and then this book is like '76 or '78. But and so it came with that. What is that? The second wave, third second wave of feminism. At any rate, but her point, her overall point is that male and female were not created until male and female, right? So
Yep.
creating humans, they weren't sexually differentiated, right? There wasn't a male or female until Eve was created, right? So her walking through the language, walking through the poem, basically, right? That
Yeah.
it's a very poetic language, and showing that poetry and also showing how the balance of it and everything. So we can get into that, but that's kind of the big picture. So, um, what did you think of a little bit that you were able to take a look at so far?
So, now I have, and this is something I think that back in the '70s when Phyllis Trible was writing this, a lot of this would have been pretty uh, cutting edge, provocative, groundbreaking sort of ideas with regards to the text, right? But I think
Yeah.
we're at a point now where most scholars will talk in these terms, especially in terms of what humankind is in as as an ungendered creature, and the
Right.
point of gendering, right? It's something that you encounter now with some frequency. So it's nice to sort of go back and look at some of that unfolding through a legend
Yeah,
like Phyllis
I
Trible.
I'm so glad that you said that because when I read it, it was earth-shattering to me, right? And I hadn't really
Yeah,
learned much of anything about anything at the time, right? I was a junior in college or something, but looking at it, it was like, oh my, so it completely
yeah,
changed. And I was very, I was very much a Christian at the time, right? And
mhm,
I have been most of my life, and but I always took that with me. It's interesting too how she kind of introduces the main chapter. Well, I don't know, maybe it was in chapter one, but how Genesis has been used against women, right? That
against women,
he
yeah.
was, Adam was created first and therefore he's superior and that kind of thing. So we can get into the details of that. But
She's
what
dependent on him, she's,
yeah,
yeah,
helper, right?
I often say, Genesis 1, 2, but the story in Genesis 2 and 3, and just so everyone's clear, just so, you know, the audience, understands this, these are 2 different stories. Scholars are largely in agreement about that. They've been put together, and arranged in such a way, and edited in such a way that, they're sort of intended to reflect a progression as part of the same activity, but almost everybody is clear on where there are obvious differences, and we can see eh, different concerns in view with each story, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 and 3. We can see different texts sort of hanging out in the background. The Enuma Elish
Right.
provides a lot of the background to Genesis 1, whereas when you get into Genesis 2 and 3, it sounds you're looking at ideas and themes more in line with the Epic of Gilgamesh, and the very, very old myth, the story of Adapa and the South Wind, which is a
Mm,
Sumerian tale. So right away, these are different stories. The Genesis 2 and 3 story is, I think, easily still one of my favorite stories from the Bible,
mm,
just because of the richness and the depth. And I still feel like I'm reading it and discovering new things as I read it, right? And one of the reasons for that is just because the author of this story, the writer, has asked questions. He's posed situations that I don't think he's answered clearly, and it
mm.
provides lots of room for people to try and figure out what's going on in the text. And like there are clues and hints about this in his telling, and this is where the language has become really helpful, right?
Yeah,
In seeing this, but it's just it's a story that works on many different levels. I think, one of the levels, and I titled the chapter in my book where I deal with this story. I called it "Knowledge, Sex, and Death," um, because this is fundamentally uh, a key component of what this story is about. It's not the only thing, but it's
right,
it's it's one of the more interesting things, I think. But I wanted to say this idea of and on this point, as a teacher of the Bible, and as an enthusiastic student of the Bible, I'm always uh, excited about things that surprise me about the text and things that I think should surprise other people. And when you dig into a story like this, it's full of surprises. One of which is this question, and it's an open question, right? It's still something that scholars are not sure about, is what on earth is meant when God says, literally, I will make an ezer, a helper,
Hmm.
for the man. So, like, it says he creates an ezer, and then, and that's the word that's translated as helper, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then it's got this expression, kinegdo, which is literally uh, like his opposite. Um, I Now, the meaning as it's understood tends to be helper, and we think of that in terms of a subordination,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But there's this word, or the root of this word, um, is used most of the time, interestingly enough, uh, of God throughout the Hebrew Bible text.
The
Um,
Azer or the
yes,
Oh,
Ezer.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
So, almost it's yeah, with great frequency, it's used to describe God's help and assistance of men. Um, God helps Israel in the exile, and uh, one of the other things that we see in it is that in some of the cognates from other ancient Near Eastern languages will uh, will render this, like in Ugaritic, which is a close cognate language. It's a Canaanite language, very similar to Hebrew.
Mhm.
The root here uh, means warrior or hero.
Mm.
Um,
The root word
it's
of Azer.
Ezer,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
Now,
This is like it's like a completely different
so
picture, isn't it?
yeah, right? And Josh, my friend, Dr. Josh, and I, when we have talked about this text, he's made this point to me, like, just in casual conversation, but I think he might be onto something, uh, in that maybe the way, because I think one of the things we have to try and filter through, and I think Phyllis Tribble was working through some of this and trying to do a lot of that in her work, um, at this point, like 50 years ago, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
uh, Getting behind the way that this text has been, um, I guess, redacted and reconstituted in a way that suppresses women.
Yes.
Getting behind that, is there something deeper here that we're just not seeing? And one of the things that Josh has talked about is reading this text with the view that the woman is actually maybe the one who's in charge.
Well,
And
I
it
was gonna say that when you said that that is used about God, that Azer is used with God. I'm like, well, of course. I mean, like the woman is right. She's ruling the world. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I just needed to make
No,
that.
no, it's
But
but
when
it's
he's mentioning that, Josh is talking with you about that.
yeah. So, I mean, you think about it, if you look at what happens, which is interesting, like the story that follows about the encounter between the woman and the snake, the nachash, which is the
Hmm.
Hebrew word there, uh, is often taken, and Tribble points this out, right? Where she notes that this is often taken as if the woman is especially naive and susceptible and vulnerable, right?
Right.
She's stupid
Right.
essentially, which is she's the weak link, you
Right.
know. Is it that, or does he talk to her because she's the boss? uh, you know,
Yeah.
very often this is what happens in biblical literature. uh in so many other texts of the Bible, messages are delivered to men because they're the conversation partners
Right.
with God or with the prophet, or
Right.
with whoever. So maybe that's a part of what's going on in this story. And then I think it also helps to make some sense of the curse on the woman specifically.
Right.
Yahweh God greatly increases her pain in labor, and then says, "Your desire will be for the man, but he will rule over you."
Right. And
Maybe
that's
is
the
this a
punishment, right?
Yeah, so
It's
what
not the
was
way
it
it ought to
what
be.
was it before?
Right.
I mean, I think
Well, in
there's
Eden,
a
apparently the women were, I mean, she was in charge. So, I mean, that would be Eden, don't you think?
ah, listen, I'm a feminist, so
I know,
I'm
I
not
know,
gonna
I know.
argue with you. You know, I Yeah. I don't see any issue with that. I don't have any
Yeah,
issue with
yeah,
that.
there you
So,
go. Well, the other thing, I'm hoping that, within the next number of weeks or months, I'll be able to chat with Megan and
did
maybe Dr. Josh, but,
oh, yeah.
about, Catherine Keller's book, From a Broken Web, which basically her take on that. Are you familiar with that one?
I haven't read it, no.
Okay,
I
well, I
know of
mean,
her.
her point, yeah, her point is, defeating Tiamat is the start of patriarchy, basically, like in a
Yeah.
nutshell. That is, it's like we're just gonna like tear the woman in half, and of course she's gonna be
Yeah,
the creation, but that's she's defeated, right? The woman,
yeah.
right? So
I
anyway,
think
that'll be
there's
fun.
a yeah, absolutely. And there is like a general subversion. I mean, I just finished writing this book. The one of the main themes in the book that I just wrote is how the biblical texts have covered and constructed propaganda around these ancient Canaanite religious ideas that over time fell out of fashion, fell out of favor. And one of the ways in which they do that is through the denigration and the disenfranchisement of women and their place in the cult.
Yeah.
This is a big part of why Asherah is is the focus of a lot of the antipathy of the biblical authors.
Mm.
But you still you catch little echoes, right, of a time when things were different. I think this is potentially one of those echoes, right? One of those those those
Yeah.
bits of lore that just kind of does that filtered through. There's another you could call it a creation myth, a creation story in Proverbs chapter 8, which speaks of chokhmah, wisdom, which is presented, I think, essentially as a goddess, as a
Mm.
female deity in the company of Yahweh. The one term there that's used to describe her relationship to Yahweh, it uses the word kana, which very often means to create.
Oh,
It says that Yahweh created wisdom in the beginning. Another way that this word can be translated is in the sense of acquires, purchases, buys.
hmm.
And it's interesting that it mentions this, and then in a parallel text to follow that, it talks about how wisdom was was birthed basically and came through the painful labor is the term that's used to describe that there. And you're kind of going, like, what's going on here? Is Yahweh actually giving birth
Right.
to wisdom? And I don't think that's it. I think what's probably more likely here is that you know, there is a another female deity, an Asherah, you know, lost behind the fabric of this text as it's been
Hmm.
rewritten and edited. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Is wisdom, the offspring of a goddess that
Hmm.
Yahweh took for himself? It kind of reads like
Oh,
that in the Proverbs story, but without any hint of the goddess there anymore,
right.
right?
Well, because
So
when you were talking about that, my first thought was Zeus and Athena, basically,
right.
coming from his head, right? And
Oh, sure.
yeah, and so like and the Greco-Roman world becoming more and more and more patriarchal, right? So
Yes.
yeah, with the with Zeus birth, and from his thigh, was it Dionysus or something that he was it Zeus and Dionysus, right?
I
Anyway,
don't
so
know.
he's birthing himself, he's birthing gods, right? Um or children, gods, but yeah, so that's taking over that what's the word for it? Job. Right?
Yeah,
Taking
right?
that away, but that's fascinating. Okay, so
So
we'll have to do, like, a whole dive into that too, because that sounds fantastic to like, I really like to know how that language works and how you come up on that
can I
idea.
can I just read this to
Yeah,
give you
do
a
it.
sense
Yeah.
it says here, Yahweh, this is my translation. Yahweh acquired me at the start of his way. And that word there that I translated as acquired could also mean create. And that's usually how English translations translate this. He acquired me at the start of his way, the beginning of his works of old. In the distant past, I was knit together from the beginning, from long ages past of earth, when there was no tehomot or depths. That's the same word that we get tehom from,
Okay, I was
which
gonna ask. Okay,
scholars,
cool. Yeah.
that's in alignment with Tiamat. When I was coming through labor is literally what the text says. And, like, one of the reasons I went the way I did here, in this, I mean, I'll just read here. Um, I've opted for acquisition. Yahweh purchased or came into possession of wisdom at the start, because this also parallels a previous part of this poem where young men are invited to do in they're invited to do the same thing, to obtain wisdom, to take hold of her, to purchase her, right?
Mm,
um this is not the full picture, though. Wisdom is knit together and has come through labor like a newborn infant. It seems unlikely that Yahweh, a male deity, gives birth to wisdom. So if not him, was she delivered by another goddess? Did Yahweh come to master wisdom like a man would a woman or a slave? It's little
mm,
wonder that the Hebrew wise men fixated on possessing this enigmatic goddess for themselves. It's why they pondered and
yeah.
navel gazed on the deep mysteries of the cosmos. But it just, there's, yeah, because anyways, I'm sorry. I've carried
No,
us
I wanna
far
ask can
afield
I
here,
ask
but
you a question about
yeah,
that?
yeah.
With
Okay.
the coming through labor,
Yeah.
is there any indication in the Hebrew of of who who is laboring? That
Not
coming through labor, that the wisdom is the one, it's passive for them, or are they laboring? You know what I mean?
I have to actually look. That was my I have to go back and look at
At
the actual
at the
Hebrew here, because
Hebrew?
I was just reading my translation.
'Cause, like
But it's, yeah, it's let me see where would okay, so let me just Proverbs 8:22. So, verse 24. So yeah, it's passive, right? So it's describing, I was basically pushed out in labor.
Okay, that's
It's right. It's
yeah, acted
it,
upon,
it
basically,
something like that.
not the
Yeah. So
actor.
it's
Okay.
it has a basic meaning of being brought forth, but this word most commonly is used of labor.
Mm,
So it's being brought forth through labor pains is another way of reading this, right?
yeah.
So one of the things that the biblical text will often do is they'll set some of these ideas, I think intentionally, in these passive terms, right? Uh just because they're not sure exactly how to, it's part of, I think it's part of scrubbing the divine feminine out of the text a lot of times, but they struggle with figuring out how to do that effectively. So I think there's a lot of room, in particular in some of these creation stories, right?
Mm,
uh trying to figure out the ways in which women are depicted, uh their place and their role in creation, and then how the male editors of a lot of these texts, or the male writers of a lot of these texts, they're drawing from these older traditions, right?
yeah.
How they're muting or subverting a lot of that.
Right.
So, but yeah, a lot of it still bleeds through though, right?
Right. Right. Can't hold a woman down, right?
That's right.
There you go. Let's take a look at the beginning, well, close to the beginning.
Yep.
It's Trible's translation, and then can we chat about that a minute, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
yeah, and
Okay.
then talk about
The earth creature,
yeah,
Adām. Yeah. Uh, and it is interesting too, right? That the so what's happening here is that throughout the entire story, um, Adam is ha-adam, which is the word Adam with the definite article attached to it. So it's literally, and I consistently translate it this way in my chapter. It's the atom. Uh, she says the earth creature, which I think is way better than what I did. I recently had a conversation with Dr. Justin Sledge from Esoterica, and he said something that I really like. He says, I think we translate way too many words from the Hebrew Bible, where a lot of times we should just leave it alone, because honestly, half the time we don't know what the hell we're doing anyways. There's a
yeah,
lot of words we just don't know, and we're guessing, right?
right.
Um, but yes, I wanted to point that out right away, and I love that translation, the Earth
Okay, cool.
Creature,
Yeah,
the
so
Earthling. I've seen it, the Earthling, before
Earthling.
too. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's really cool. Yeah, this is and so many people don't know that this is how Genesis 2 starts, that God formed, because it's always, and is it it's a capitalized, isn't it? In English translations,
it's the name. Yeah,
God formed
it's
Adam, the
just an
name,
atom.
right?
Yes, and at this point, and at no point through the entire story, like I think you have to get to uh does it happen in Genesis? No, not let me
It's
actually just do a search to see the first time it actually just occurs on its own. Literally, it's 425 is where you first see it used as a name.
Oh, man, I thought it
Uh,
was, like, right after the woman and man. We'll get to that woman and man part, but okay.
no,
When his
no,
name is
he
actually
continues to,
Adam.
yeah, yeah. So he continues to go on. Let me go back to, I'm got a couple windows open here.
Mhm.
In like throughout chapter 3, I'm just looking, it's Ha-isha, which is the woman, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And uh at that point, I still think he's calling him, let me see. Yeah, he's still, like, you still have in verse 9, Yahweh God called to Ha-adam. And that's still the man, or it could be them, right? So
Right.
it's but it's not. And and then in verse 12, Vayomer Ha-adam, he said, the man said, the woman Ha-isha, who you
Yeah.
gave to me. So, like,
Right.
it's still, but importantly, I think it's really important to point out that at this point in the story and through the entire story, this is not a name, right?
Right.
This is a description of this creature, this
Right.
being, the
Right.
earthling, the earth
Right.
creature.
In your chapter, as soon after you talk about this, you do say mankind, I think.
I might. I'll have to go back and look.
And I'm not sure you
Um,
mean to, or, like, would you wanna say humankind, right? Because that's the whole point, that's the whole
it's
confusion, isn't it,
yeah,
between
but I think
mankind
it's,
and
in some ways, I think it is, and that's what one of the problems with these texts, right? Is I think there is sort of a winking ambiguity to a lot of this stuff, where you're not supposed to uh see it clearly, because it's not like it doesn't, it's used, this word now, after this story, is generally used almost exclusively of, like, humankind, right?
right.
It's a designator whenever you see it from here on out. Like, it's the in like Genesis 6, for example, the sons of God, or the sons of the
Mm,
gods, when they
yeah,
come down and they saw that the Bat Ha'adam, the daughters of mankind, essentially,
mhm,
uh, were really good looking.
yeah,
Yeah, so this is part of the problem with a lot of this ambiguity. I'm glad you
right.
mentioned that, though, because maybe need to go back and look at that again. But
Yeah, it's
maybe there's something there I need to fix.
well,
But
the thing that I think is fascinating here is the ambiguity of the earth creature. Do you say Ha-Adam? Is that how you
yeah,
pronounce it? And so that and Tribble actually addresses this as well, right? That there is that ambiguity
yeah,
because later the male Ha-Adam is named Adam. And so
yep,
and that's kind of what you're talking about too, as far as that ambiguity. It it leaves us kind of I can understand why to a certain extent. I can understand why, we've had this basically mistranslated for so long,
yeah.
but also I don't, because there's no sexual differentiation here. It is the earth creature. Is this Ha Adam a masculine noun?
It is,
It is a
'cause
masculine
the
noun,
but this is,
so
it's not like, but this is, that's not a, I don't think it's a good way of thinking through
right.
this question, because you've only got 2 options in Hebrew. Things are either only masculine or feminine. There is
Oh,
no neuter
really?
in Hebrew, yeah. So
Oh.
it's like it's masculine by default and necessity. So it's, I mean, now, let's, something else that's kinda interesting here too. If we're thinking about this in gendered terms, And again, I'm going to break my own rule here about you know, uh, how meaningful this is in Hebrew. Importantly, ha'adama, the earth or the ground, is feminine. Um,
Ah, okay.
right? And the ha'adam is the slave to the adama. That's his part of his purpose, right?
Right.
Is working and keeping.
Yeah.
And then when the curse, this is what um Yahweh says. He curses the Adamah, and then sends man out to work for his food. Basically,
But I've
he
heard you
becomes a
argue.
slave to the.
Sorry, I'm
No, no,
interrupting
go
you.
ahead.
But I've
No,
heard
no,
you
no.
argue that basically the earth creature,
Yeah,
the Ha'adam, is created to take care of God's Eden, to take care of the
yep,
garden. Like that's the,
yep.
like, okay, you're gonna be
And
my
this
when
isn't
you said
my.
slave, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and this isn't. There's a lot of. This is actually Bruce Wells has
Oh.
talked about this and is publishing a book on it in the near future that we're all eagerly waiting for. But he's talked about, it's no secret, in both creation stories, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 and 3, there's a lot of um nods to temple imagery and iconography and temple service. So I think too, the Garden of Eden is probably imagined like a temple garden or
Mm,
a city garden of some sort, right? It's not an untrammeled uh uh a natural vista,
gotcha.
the
It's
woods out it's like it's an urban garden,
yeah,
which was something was it's something that ancient people took great pride in, was in
right.
harnessing nature in this way to build these fabulous watered, landscaped gardens, right? I think that's probably what
Right.
we're looking at here. And I
Mm,
think in this context, what Bruce Wells argues is that the man and the woman are like oblates. So they're in the service of the garden. They're there to
what
look after the garden. They're kind of,
what word did you
and it's
say?
God's garden. Oblates.
Oblates. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't hear it. Okay. Yeah.
And an important I think an important point thing to point out on that note is that it's actually God's garden.
Mhm.
That's what it's called in other texts. Eden is mentioned in the book of Ezekiel. It's also mentioned in the book of Isaiah, and there it's specifically identified as the garden of God. Um,
Mm.
that's called Eden.
I have
So
never heard that. I've never heard that.
yeah, wow.
Cool.
Well,
Yeah, well, I'm
it
not a biblical. I mean, I don't
this
study
is it,
the
right? People, because we have this idea, and I think it sort of comes through, because we're always reading our own experiences into the text, right?
Mhm.
And that's the way I read it. Like I love nature. I live in one of the most beautiful places on earth. One of my favorite things to do is just to get out of the city and go into the woods or into the
Yeah,
mountains, right?
right.
And just enjoy it. That's something that we like to do. So we tend to just read that back into the text, but that's not,
Yeah.
that this is not something that was especially comforting to the people who wrote these texts, especially when you think of where they came from, the kind of world that they lived in. In fact, in this story, it says, quite literally at the end of it, I think that, when the man is banished, basically from the garden, uh he goes out into, like, uh the it's like a hostile world. that he goes
Yeah.
into, right?
Oh, right. When
It's
he's
not a
kicked out.
safe space. And when you think about the geography here too, if you're living in Palestine, to the east of you, uh, is the this enormous trackless wilderness that basically stretches all the way from the Transjordanian plateau, just on the eastern side of the Jordan River, to Babylon. It's like 800 kilometers.
Yeah.
Nobody lived out there. Nobody. I mean, certainly you lived up on, lots of people lived up on top of the plateau, right? But they never went. You couldn't just go and walk or ride your donkey or your horse across the trackless wasteland of Babylon. There was just,
Mm.
it was the wilderness. It was a scary place that nobody
But
wanted to
people
be
did
in.
travel. Like, how did they? What route did they take? Because I know
So,
they traveled from Tyre to Babylon, right? I
oh,
mean,
absolutely, yes. And this is why when you read in the texts, in the biblical text, when you read about Babylon, it's oftentimes described as the foe from the north, because even though on like on a in terms of latitude, I think Babylon is actually a little bit south of Jerusalem, but they would go around the wilderness. So you basically, if you're traveling from Babylon, you're following the Euphrates River all the way north
mm,
until it basically intersects, I think, with the Orontes River, which then at that point you can start making your way down south. One of the reasons why this was such a contested space for so much of its history is because this was a very important trade corridor between Egypt and the Hittite, originally the Hittite Empire in the north, that more or less became like the Assyrian people, and
mhm,
Babylon,
mhm,
because you couldn't go across the trackless wasteland. You had to go around it, so everything was filtered up and down the coast.
mm.
And Jerusalem's like 25 kilometers from the coast. So,
Yeah.
sorry, little geography lesson
No,
there.
that really does help because in the romances that I've covered so far, there's been a lot of travel,
Yeah.
and going to Babylon is one of the, you know, it was Habercomies and Anthea, I think, that went
Oh,
there.
sure.
Or was it Chares?
Yeah.
Anyway, I gotta go. I get my
Yeah.
details all
Yeah.
mixed up, but I mean, they, and um, yeah, and they doing that traveling. I'm like, well, how did they get there? But crossing the
Right. Yeah.
Euphrates was she knew she was probably never going home again when she crossed
Right.
the Euphrates. She thought, that's it. I'm
That's
here
it.
for good. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But she did get to go home, so that's good. But so could you talk a little bit about the poetry of this? Because I find that, like,
Oh, yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about the structure of this, because I I've always read this in English, right? I have no
Yeah.
idea how poetic it is and how balanced it appears to be, and the callbacks, right, of the words, how the language really, it's really cool. So can you walk us through that a little bit? Because I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, sure. So she's pointing to a few things where you've got this repetition in a and a prime of Yahweh God, right? Named, and
Mhm,
then performing an activity. And the first one, Yahweh God, Yatsar is the verb there, meaning to form, Ha'adam, of the dust of the Adama. So this is the earthling, the earth creature, out of the dirt from the ground, literally, or the earth. And something I think is useful to point out. I often point this out when I when I teach this stuff is that the verb there, yatsar, which we translate to form,
Mhm.
is a word that's used for making and shaping pottery. So I love the picture because it's literally God getting down into the dirt
Yeah.
and
A
and
actually
and
forming the mud.
forming, yeah, out of the
Yeah.
mud, like he's literally building like a golem, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is something I mean, that's I'm gonna get in trouble now because golems are something that only people can build. So it's but anyways, um, so but that's what he's doing, right? Like he's shaping the dirt into the form of a man. But one of the things that that Tribble is pointing out here is that at the end of this, at the end of verse 9 there, it says, "Vayashem sham et Adam asher yatzar," and he set there the man whom he had formed
The man?
in the garden.
Is
So,
it
or
is
sorry,
it the
the
man?
Adam. No, it's the Adam. Sorry,
No
I'm
worries.
the Earthling.
Yes.
So there's that repetition of the verb there, the
Yeah.
verbal clause. Um, and yeah, so you've got
It opens and closes
it closes it, yeah,
the whole
exactly.
section. Yeah.
And you've got and you've got the man here is repeated again. Or sorry, not the man. The earthling is appears in like all three of the clusters she has
Yes.
there. Ha'adam is the one who's formed. Ha'adam becomes the living nefesh, life or soul. This is a word. Nefesh is a word um, that comes from a verb meaning to breathe. Um, and then it closes it too, right? He put there Ha'adam, whom he
Right.
had formed. So it's you're forming units of speech using repetition and by setting them off with lots of the same language on the ends of them, you're opening and closing
Right.
with the same sort of terminology. And yeah, it's and this is stuff honestly that you see all over the place um in the biblical text that often just unfortunately doesn't come through so clearly in the English, right? But
Right.
and
But
also
it does in
because
your translations, doesn't it?
no, probably not.
No.
I don't know.
No, it's a
It's
bit.
it takes So, especially when it comes to translating, I think one of the hardest things to do is translating poetry.
Yeah.
Just because you're trying to make it, because one of the things like um in a situation like this, you're also dealing with word order, which functions differently in Hebrew than it does in English, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then and also the play on words, the close phonetic connection and actual morphological connection between like the man, what's translated as the man, and
Right.
the earth or the ground, is it like it's essentially the same word, right?
Right, and
Adam
you can't
and
see that
Adamai.
in
You
English at
you
all.
don't, and there's no way to show that either, except to do it the way, um, Tribble has done it, and this is where I kinda repeat that, there's a lot of things, like Dr. Justin Sledge said, that maybe we should just leave untranslated.
Yeah.
Or one of the things I do pretty regularly throughout my book is I provide a transliteration. I provide tons of transliterations of things in the book similar to this, and
Mhm.
include the translations with them, just because it's really important to key people in on, look, listen to how this word sounds, right? And then
Right.
there's another word, to in the next verse or 2 or 3 verses later that is a different word but sounds very similar, and that's by design.
Right.
Within this story, I don't know. I didn't actually get this far. I don't know if she said anything about this, but there's actually a very, very good example of this at the hinge, what I call the hinge, at Genesis chapter 2, verse 25, and chapter 3, verse 1. Right? It says, speaking of, this is when the man and the woman finally come together. It
Mhm.
says, the two of them were naked, ha'adam, v'ishto. That's the earthling, the earth creature, the man or the Adam, and
Mhm.
his woman. The two of them were naked, and they were not ashamed. So
Mm.
the word there translated as naked, it literally says, Vayihyu Shenehem Arumim. It's that word, Arumim,
Okay.
means naked. And then chapter 3, verse 1, it says, the next thing it says is that the snake was more clever than all the animals of the field whom Yahweh God had made.
Mhm.
In the Hebrew, it's V'hanachash haya arum. So I hope you can hear it. The man and the woman
True.
were arumim.
Mhm.
They were naked.
Yeah.
The
Adapa.
snake was arum. He was clever.
Ah, so that's the
But
knowledge and the sex, right? And the
yeah, yeah,
okay, and the
exactly.
nakedness,
So
right?
and
Okay.
and it's really interesting because I mean, they don't just sound the same. It's literally the same word.
Right,
Like,
right.
they're identical, right? So,
Yeah,
but these are the sorts of things that you miss in your translations, and until someone points it out to you,
right,
like, that connection just doesn't mean anything, right, in English.
right, right,
Whereas any Hebrew reader is looking at that and going, "Oh, like, this is significant, this is important." So,
right,
but
right,
all that to
right,
say, the poetic stuff is really hard to translate because a lot of times those, I and to make it sound good too.
right. Yeah,
It's hard.
exactly.
But anyways.
Well, let's take a look real quick at this part here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
So
didn't read this part. I didn't get this far in her book. I so she does translate this as rib because there is some question about that too. Um, but this is a really interesting image here. Um, so Yahweh God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Ha'adam, the earthling, and while he slept, he took one of its ribs and closed up flesh at that spot. And then Yahweh God, and she translates this correctly too, built the rib using a word that you never would you like all the way through Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2 to this point when it describes God's creative activity. It uses words, most commonly it uses the word asa, meaning to make or to
okay,
do, right?
okay.
When God formed, the man out of the dirt.
Mhm.
This is strange here. No one ever translates it as God built the rib, but that's what it says. And this word is like, this is the word that elsewhere in Hebrew is used of building houses and buildings. But there's a very important reason why it appears here, I think. So this is something that's called a blind motif. Are you familiar with this term?
Yes, okay, so that's why I was like, "Oh, wait, you and Dr. Josh have talked about this and the use of this word, that
Hmm.
rib," but I never noticed until you just said, "Built the rib," and I'm like, "Wait a second." So explain. This is
So,
fascinating.
the word bana in Hebrew is never used this way, but the cognate of this word in Akkadian is used this way all the time
So the
as
built
a
or the
word of
rib?
creation. The built, the
Okay.
rib is
Okay.
important too, and we'll talk about
Okay.
that in a second. But the
Okay.
word built is used all the time in ancient Near Eastern creation myths, particularly those that are written in Akkadian, of gods creating. Um, so this is when we say this is a blind motif, what we mean this is that this is a word or a term or an idea that's filtered through into the text that's out of place. Um, Sometimes awkwardly so, but it's recalling something from like these earlier texts or traditions. Like this, the blind motifs that appear in these stories are often our best indicators of the existence of some of these other stories behind them, right? So by
Hmm.
using this expression, he built Yahweh God built the rib. This is the writer of this story basically using ancient Near Eastern creation language to express what's happening here. And I
Hmm.
don't think that that's necessarily, it might be an accident on the part of the writer, but I think it's a very important clue about where this story comes from. It's just it's a clear sign that there's this lore in the background, right?
Right. That's what I was going to ask is like, did it just, it seems to have just come up here because that is often the way the creation ha- stories have used the word, right? This is what you're saying. So
Yep.
it's like I'm trying to think of an example of something, um without stealing all of Josh's examples, but yeah, like that it just
No,
kind of
we can steal Josh's examples. It's okay. No, I was just going to say, like, yeah, like he's written about this, right?
right.
In his atheist handbook of the Old Testament. And uh he says here, and just to give you some examples, right, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, uh the great Arudu, they called you Arudu, did create, use that's the same word, bana, the man, create now is double, his stormy heart let him match. So it appears there. Later on, it says that Arudu washed her hands, pinched off clay. This is kind of interesting too. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, uh, the goddess washes her hands, pinches off some clay, and casts it onto the steppe. She created using the same word again, valiant Enkidu. Um, and then in the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation myth, you see the same thing. I will amass and cause bones to be. This is Marduk's description of the creation of man from the blood of Kingu. He says, "Blood I will mass and cause bones to be. I will establish a Lulu," which is the term used for a man. It shall be his name. So then, Lulu man, I will create. That's using the same word again, right? Bana. And here's what Josh actually says about it. It happens at Atrahasis again. Let the mother goddess create a human being using that same word.
Hmm.
Let man assume the drudgery of a god. And what Josh says about this is the combination of the common use of the verb to build in other ancient Near Eastern creation stories, coupled with its rare usage in the Old Testament, suggests that this is an echo of an old Mesopotamian tradition. So it's something
Yeah.
that's filtered through, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it strikes you, and you goes, "Wow, that's weird."
Built the
Um,
rib.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it would be the same sort of way that, like, it's probably like an expression of speech, right?
Hmm.
That we would use today, where um we use expressions of speech all the time without really recognizing where they came from,
Right.
or uh but they're it's in this case it's an indication that that there's something more going on here and something behind the text. But the
Right.
rib is important too.
What is the
So
word for
so
rib?
first, the word is selah, and now importantly, there's still ongoing controversy regarding this word. Most of the time, you'll see the discussion on whether this means rib, which is actually what I think it is, or side, like the whole side of the man. Because
Okay.
other places where it appears in the Hebrew Bible, but importantly, this is usually with regards to buildings, like structures.
Yeah.
It means side. Like it's you see it used in the description of the temple, of like the rooms on the envelope. They're on the sides of the main structure, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
a couple of scholars, I know this is what John Walton, he's an evangelical Christian scholar, wants to do with this text. um they see this as, and it kind of fits too, this picture of the man, uh where if God has taken like the whole side, he's basically like split him in half, and created, basically split the man in half to create two new creatures,
Wait a
right?
second. People interpret it that way?
Yeah. In a manner of speaking, right? I think
I
it's
have
I
never
think it's
heard
a
this. This is so cool.
I think it's
I know nothing
difficult.
about a Hebrew Bible. Thank you, Kip, for being here for me and
Sure.
teaching me this about this. I appreciate it.
It's
But
not like
okay.
I think I get it, right? Because it is sort of what's happening in this story, where uh the gendered
Right.
mankind, this is what this is describing, right? It is the splitting. I actually call this section in my book, I call it splitting the atom. uh I'm
Nice.
not the first person to come up with that, but it's
I
it's
know,
just
but
too good,
still,
right?
that's pretty, yeah.
So, but it's a description of what's happening here. You're taking this one creature, the earthling, the earthman, and you're basically turning him into two gendered beings.
Right.
Uh, and it's very tempting, I think, to see this as just you know, a
Well, so but you
bifurcation.
like rib, though.
I
You
like
like
rib, and
side.
I'll explain why. So, the reason I like rib is because what because of who the rib becomes. The rib uh is built into a woman, right?
Mhm, mhm,
She's called Isha because she came out of Ish, the man, which is the Hebrew word for man.
mhm,
And then you go down later in the story, when Adam, sorry, when the Adām actually uh gives a name to the woman, and I think that's down in chapter 3, verse 20. It says the man named his wife Chava, which we transliterate into Eve. And the reason for this is because she was the mother of all chai, all life. I think this connection here, being the mother of life, is important in this discussion. There's a very old, I think it's a Sumerian story, uh, called Enki and Ninhursag. It's a really, really strange story because Enki, the god, he basically, he's ejaculating all over the place,
Okay.
and through his ejaculate, he's creating things everywhere,
Okay.
right? And he uh basically sits in front of um Ninhursag, the goddess, and they as as they have sex, they're creating new goddesses
Mm,
over and over and over, and in the course of the story, at one point, it's a very odd story. At one point, she gives him something to eat that makes him sick, like gravely sick, like he's going to die.
mm,
um and he's begging her for help, and then these goddesses that he's created, or that have, that she's given birth to, one by one, uh she comes to him and she says, what hurts my brother, is what she says, and he goes, well, my arm hurts, and she's like, and then the goddess who heals his arm becomes the lady of the arm, kind of thing, right? And so,
okay.
and my tooth hurts, and then the goddess comes and heals his, and she becomes like the lady of the tooth. The goddess who comes and heals his rib is then called the mother of the rib, but this is a play on in Sumerian for life. So she's also called the mother of all the living. So Eve is the mother of all the living, who was created from the rib. In Sumerian mythology, the mother of the living is also the mother of the rib. She's the rib goddess, the
You
rib
can
lady.
you just can't deny this stuff. You just can't ignore that.
No,
No?
you
You
can't.
cannot. You
So,
can't overlook stuff like that. That is like, okay. That is
right?
like,
It's a
hello?
it's a very, very
Reflection,
deep cut,
reflection,
though,
reflection. Oh,
as
yeah.
they say, right? It is a
Yeah.
very, very deep cut. Like,
Mm.
you have to it wouldn't even in antiquity, I don't think it's something that would have been noticed by everyone. But certainly some people would have looked at this and gone, "Oh, yeah, I remember that story." Right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
weird story about yeah, that makes sense. So, um, but that's why I think it's a rib.
Well,
So, but this whole thing,
at the minimum, it seems that the writer knew about
mhm,
that story.
I think so,
Okay.
right? Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that I would say yes. Uh, that's that's
Hmm.
that's probably obvious. So,
Totally cool.
yeah,
Well,
I'm
I
just
was
gonna
just
write it
gonna
down.
point to the fact that this is here. This is where we have the woman, Isha, because
Mhm.
from Ish was taken this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is where we switch
From
from the
Adām.
Ha'adam. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the first time he's identified as an Ish. That's correct.
Ish.
And it's only
Did I say
because
ish? That's my southern ish.
uh,
Ish. Okay, sorry.
so I
Yeah.
and it's because of this, right?
Mhm.
It's because I think very clearly this is the point of the story here is that this is the creation of gendered beings out of this probably an androgynous creature
Yeah.
of some sort, right?
Right.
Neither male nor female
It seems that
was
way.
the Adam. It really
Yeah.
does. And that's another important part of this story too. Is that one of the key points? And I think that's what's happening in Genesis chapter 1 as well. Both writers are very keen to make this distinction that uh humankind, this gendered existence of humanity, is also very, very different from all the animals, basically. I want to
Mm.
say all the rest of the animals because we all are, right?
Right.
But these writers had they didn't know
Right.
that.
Right.
In their minds, we're human beings are completely different, completely separate
Right.
from animals, and this is part of this distinction. The reason why the woman had to be uh taken out of, you'll notice that too, the man, or sorry, I keep doing this, the adam, the earth creature,
Yeah.
is formed out of the ground, right?
Right. Right.
uh the very first thing that God notices after he puts him in the garden to till it and to keep it, to work it, and to look after it, he says that it's not good that he's doing this on his own. He needs help. He needs an azer. He needs someone. He needs a supervisor,
Needs a boss. He needs a boss.
right?
Right.
He needs a boss. And then the next thing he does is he makes the animals, all the animals of the field, as well as the cattle and the birds. And that's a way of just saying that he made like domesticated and non-domesticated animals and birds. Uh,
Mhm.
so he brings them to the man to see what he's going to name them. But then it says that this it doesn't work, right? It's
Right.
not, the problem is still there. He hasn't solved it. So when the animals, importantly, are made out of the dirt like the man was,
Right.
the solution is not to do the same thing over again, because that didn't work, obviously. Which is why he has to take him out. He basically has to split the adam to make these two beings. So I think
Yeah.
that's part of this, right? Like that that
Yeah.
that we're drawing this sharp distinction between what human beings are compared to uh animals.
Hmm.
Let me just look here and see. There's some of the stuff that I say here. Unlike the Adam, the animals and the birds, the woman is not created from dirt. The woman is from the very start part of the Adam. The Adam and the animals are new creations. I like this one. The Adam and the animals are new creations, the man and the woman. And it's important to note that in the splitting of the Adam, that's something that gets missed. And Tribble complains about this too, right? It's not so much that the woman was created out of the man, it's that the Ish and the Isha were created out of the Adam,
Correct.
right?
Right.
The
Right.
man and the woman are recreations. So, and that's really the beginning, right, of
Yeah.
this gender distinction. So I said here, what is often lost in surface reads of the story is that the making of the woman is also the making of a new man. The Adam calls her Isha, woman, because from an Ish, a man, this one was taken. For the first time in the story, the Adam self identifies using the ubiquitously common word for man in the Hebrew Bible, which is Ish.
Hmm.
He's now an Ish, from which the Isha is made, like his opposite. The picture is similar but not identical to that in the Genesis 1 creation myth, where God creates Adam, mankind, and they are separated, male and female. Zakar and Nikva are the terms there.
Yeah.
This image on the whole, then, is a visceral picture of the gendered nature of mankind and a projection back to the original androgynous created being. The Isha is a part of the Adam. The Adam was a symbiosis of male and female in one form, but became gendered man and woman at their separation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How do you now visualize this, and how do you see this happening, right?
Hmm.
I don't know. It's kind of cool.
It
So,
is cool. It is cool. Yeah. And I really, I mean, I think that sums it up really well. the this is the point. This is the part where you use the word mankind,
Oh,
where I'm thinking maybe you
uh,
don't want to use the word mankind. Can it be confusing?
yeah. Let me act. In this paragraph.
Yeah. Mhm.
Where was it? I just read it, didn't
You just read it, yeah.
so, it's gone is not what I mean. Opposite. So, oh yeah, right. I've got it in. So right. No, because I'm talking about the Genesis 1 creation myth there.
Yes.
Um, where I think it is mankind in the Genesis 1 creation myth. And you'll notice I also have it in quotes there too.
Oh, you did
Maybe
have
I
it
need
in
a
quotes.
footnote. Maybe I need a
Okay.
footnote.
Well,
Maybe I should
as a
I have
woman
to add a
reading it, it did stand out to me.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You see what I
Like, how do
mean?
you maybe I should say humankind. Is that better?
I would, or humanity, or yeah, or something. What page is
Humanity.
that on?
That's page it's on mine, it's 205, but it's actually oh, shoot, it's on your PDF I sent
Yeah,
you, which
it's
is
got
different one.
page numbers in there. Page 205.
205. Yeah.
Okay, so
Maybe
pull that page.
but I appreciate that. Um,
Speaking of a new
humanity.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now
and you do
I
have
might
it
have to
in
go back.
quote. Yeah, you do have it in
Yeah.
quotes,
But
mankind,
I
and they are separated. But then later you don't. The visceral picture of the gendered nature of mankind.
oh, yeah. See, that was, but I think that's
But that's the point,
well,
isn't
I'll
it? That
just
that's what's
it is.
confusing, you know?
Yeah. So because that's what happens in throughout the rest of the Bible, right? Is even though Ish and Isha are both part of the Adām, like,
Mhm.
it never from this point, this is what it means, right? It means humanity or mankind or
So when they say
humankind.
son of mankind, how is that, what is that in Hebrew?
It's like, it's almost it's usually no, it's always, Ben Adam or Ben Ha-Adam, the son of man. And that's I mean, all those
St-
places in, the book of Ezekiel, like the expression appears, I think, 80 times in the
Yeah,
book of Ezekiel, son of man, as just a way of saying human being, right? It's
right.
singular there,
But it's not
but
it's not Ish, ben
no,
Ish.
no. No, exactly, because at that point, it's a son of human being at that
There
point
you
is a
go.
better way of translating it,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
it's not man. And yeah, usually when we translate it literally, it's son
Yeah.
of man. But
Yeah.
you're right, in how this can be confusing.
Well,
But
I
I think
mean,
I'm changing it.
okay.
So
I think,
and I thank you for that
yeah,
because you know, you're seeing this, it's like everybody, right? You see things
see things
differently.
differently.
So
But
it's
what
nice to
another one of the, like, very original works that I read was Rosemary Redford Ruther, Sexism and God Talk.
oh, okay.
And so and how language, and how the
Yeah.
language that we use, and how, for God, right? How that,
Oh, sure.
affects the way that we see the world, right? And
Yeah.
so how, yeah, so yeah, clean up
Language
your
has always done
language.
that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Mhm.
So I was gonna so I just brought it up, right? Male and female in, um, Genesis chapter 1. Like
Right.
those words, and I think this is illustrative of your point, a little bit, just in terms of the words that we use and how they reflect on you know the ways in which we even think about the genders.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just bringing this up here because it's verse. I want to get this right. Um, is it verse 27? Yeah. Zakar and Nikva are the terms. Zakar is male, Nikva is female. The root of the word Zakar for me. And this is from some work by I don't know if you've heard of her. I believe this is Atalia Brenner, who is a feminist theologian, um, who is a little bit more recent, but she's written on this.
Yeah.
Uh, and she has said, she's pointed this out, right? Like the root of the word zakar, meaning that's translated male, is usually to remember, or memory.
Hmm.
Um, and it's the root of the word female, uh, nikeva, is it means basically uh, to dig a hole, or the noun, the nominal form,
Okay.
uh, will often mean, or sorry, I should say that's the nikeva is the feminine form of the word, right? The
Okay.
masculine form of the word is like a cave or a hole, and it's almost like a, a feminized form of hole. So it's she the way Adelia Brenner talks about these terms. She talks about man as the carrier of memory, right? The
Hmm.
zakar, the male, is the carrier of memory, and the nikeva is the hole that needs to be filled. Obviously, like there's a point, I think, where this term is derivative, right, of that. Essentially, a woman is a vagina
Right.
that
Right.
basically needs to be filled by a man, right?
Right. Right.
So, but it's it's just like all these things are, like words just kind of become
Right.
and what they are, and they take on new meanings. But
Yeah. Yeah.
at one point, that's the mindset here, right? At
Right.
when these
Exactly.
things were happening. So, and I don't think I don't think that the writer of Genesis 1 is making that point. I think
Right.
that's just a linguistic point, right? An etymological point
Right.
that that carries forward. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of gross.
That's all we're good for. No.
Yeah,
No.
it
No.
yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the idea. That's the perspective, right? That can come across.
Yeah.
So,
But but she's right though too, Phyllis Trible, in the Genesis 1 text, to point out, and I think it is really important that there again, humanity is defined in these terms
right.
as male and female, and she spends a lot of time talking about, points very specifically to the pronouns that
Mhm.
appear in that text, right? How
Mhm.
uh when God speaks to them, right? He's not speaking
Right.
to one of them. He's speaking to both of them.
Right. Right.
Uh
And the Adām, I think she refers to it,
yeah,
right? I mean, there's,
yeah.
the earth creature.
Because
Yeah.
it's
Right.
not, even though it's gendered by necessity, I think
Mhm.
the picture that the writer is communicating is that this is not it's not a gendered creature.
Right.
But
Right.
they just didn't have the language really to express that.
So
And the Greek translator didn't understand it, otherwise he would have translated it as neuter too, but he
right.
could have,
Right.
right? He
Right.
had the
Right.
tools,
Right.
but,
But again, the perspective, like when you have your biases that you don't necessarily even know, but it's that language, I mean, that we're missing here because of the
yeah,
language that we've always had in English about it. So and how that forms our perspective and of the world, and also then I can go back through the list that that Tribble starts the chapter with of, because it's been basically mistranslated, we
yeah,
have the wrong picture. of that men are supposed to be superior to women, right? So,
Yes.
yeah,
Something just dawned on me here as we were talking about the Greek text, and I'm just checking, but I think it's that maybe we can blame the Greek translator for some of the problems
the Greek translator
here.
of the Hebrew Bible.
Yep.
Mhm.
Because I think yes. So here, this is what the Greek translator starts to do in Genesis chapter 2. You read the Greek, I think, don't you?
I mean, I can read Greek letters.
Oh, okay.
I don't read Greek yet. I'm learning
So I
Greek.
don't know.
I'm trying to learn Greek, but I
Are
just
you?
didn't know if it
Oh,
was
good
helpful.
for you.
Yeah.
Where it says there was an Adām, there was not for working the Adama at the end of verse 5. So he says, Kai anthropos uk hein ergadseste tain gain. So there was a man, anthropos, he
Mhm.
uses for Adám.
Yes.
I think regularly through the text. Because if you look, the easiest thing here, I've got them actually listed on in the column at the right here in Genesis 2 verse 8. You can see there at Adam, he translates as ton anthropon. And then in verse 9, it doesn't appear. Oh right, this is the geography lesson. That's right. So we have to get through the geography lesson here to get to verse 15. God took et Adam in Genesis 2:15, translated as ton anthropon, the man. Um, verse Then look what happens in verse 16. Uh, Yahweh God commanded al Adam is the Hebrew. He issued this command to the Adam, at which point the Greek translator decides Tol Adam. So he's given him a name here now at this point
But
in verse 16.
that's not where his name comes up yet, is it?
It doesn't, right? So, and then from that, I wonder if from that point on, if he's just consistently. So yeah, it looks like he's just consistently from this point on just calling him Adam. It happens again in verse 20. Oh, let's see. In in verse 21, calls him Adam. In verse 22, uh it says uh uh yeah, so this is where he creates the woman.
Mhm.
um so and he actually uses, this is good because he actually uses the word hokodomenas, hokodome mesane. Sorry, my translation is crappy always. So this is to build. So the Lord God built uh, uh, the rib that he took from Adam, but he actually puts the definite article there. So he's got the Adam
The
this time.
Adam. Okay.
So
But not the
into a
anthropos.
gunekai, into a woman, and he brought her to uh, Adam, right? So and he just continues on to call him Adam. It looks like
Mm.
throughout the the text.
Whereas before, when first introduced, it was the
Anthropos.
anthropos
Yeah, and this
looking
is kind of
woman.
interesting here, where the Adam uh, sings his song. This one is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. This one will be called Isha because from Ish, uh, uh, she was taken. This one
Mhm.
was taken.
Mhm.
The Greek translator here says uh, "Klethesetai gune," she will be called woman. "Hote ek tu andros." autes. He was taken. So he's using another word there.
For
Or
male,
no, yeah,
not
right?
not human.
No. Huh. So
You are right.
maybe we
It's
can
the
just maybe we can
Septuagint's
put,
fault.
yeah, it's their fault. We can just put the blame on them for, causing this mess in the first place.
See, we were talking about how the Greco-Roman world was so patriarchal, right? So hierarchical and
Yeah.
patriarchal, right?
No. So they
Oh
didn't know what the fuck
man.
to do with this. They were like, "Oh, we gotta fix this." But I think
And we're
they'll
all
find off.
suffering.
Yeah, right? So, but
Mm,
I've pointed this out before. There's lots of times in the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible where you can see the translators kind of going, I don't know what to do." So,
yeah.
so yeah.
Wow. Wow. No, that's really have you walked through that part before? Like, I guess that
In the
that's why you
Greek?
brought it up. Yeah. I mean, and
It just
notice
came
that
to
to
me
that.
now. No, I didn't
Oh,
even think about it before today. I was like, "Oh,
huh?
I wonder," because
We
I
got to write a
knew.
paper, Kip. We need to write a paper.
Well, I expect it's been written. I just haven't read it. So,
Okay, yeah, yeah. I mean, I
but
can't do it. I can't read Greek or Hebrew. So
yeah,
what?
but I knew that that at some point the Greek translator just resorted to calling him Adam. I just
Yeah,
wasn't sure where that happened. So
right,
it's nice to
right.
actually walk through that and see that.
Yeah,
And then even, how he's handling these different words at different times. So
yeah,
so that's good.
yeah,
Thank you for prompting me on that.
yeah. That's
That
cool
was
though.
useful.
There's so much to this. I just want to bring it up briefly, just
Okay.
to show. And I don't know, maybe we should have started with this part, but let me pull that back up again. So how this right? So a male god creates the first man and the first creates first
Yes,
man and last woman, right? So that
woman.
means the superior. We talked about that, inferior,
Yeah.
subordinate. Woman is created for the sake of man, the helpmate, right? Which we talked
Mhm.
about as far as
To cure
maybe
his loneliness. Like, that's the one that gets me, right? It's not like, uh no, like, he didn't, I think there's clearly, I think this text is clearly on one level about sex, right?
hmm
And one of
hmm
the messages in the text is, you shouldn't have sex with animals. But,
right,
um, eh, because that's part of the incompatibility, right? Is
right,
that
right.
these, I think that's built into it, but that's not all of it. The
hmm
reason why, he created the animals in the first place was to solve this problem that
Yeah,
man was
with companion,
was
right?
yes, but companion in what?
Mm.
Right? It
Mm.
it's
Gotcha.
it's in it's not just to make him feel better, because I think that's what's communicated through this. Like, he's lonely, he's sad, he needs a friend. No, he needs help, right?
Yeah, doing all the
And he
work.
needs someone, yes. So, like, there's a functional element here that I think
Right,
is missing.
right.
Uh Woman comes out of man. And some of this too, right? Like, this is straight out of the New Testament. This is the writer of first or second Timothy,
Oh, right, right.
right?
So yeah, this starts so early. Yeah,
Hmm.
this the theology that comes from this misreading. Well, I mean, that's all
You
Greek,
know,
right? The New Testament's all Greek. It's the Greek. It's the Greek. It's the
yeah, yeah,
problem,
yeah.
right?
I
But
have to I have to say this. I had a student once write a paper in, I don't remember what the class was, but she wrote a paper, and I was so proud of her because she tackled this question of women in the church. It must have been at a Bible college, if that was the if that was the question. But um she tackled this question of women in the church, and then looked at the text from either First or Second Timothy, where Paul makes this argument, right?
Hmm.
That men are in charge because they were created first. That's
Yeah.
the argument he makes. And
Yeah.
she actually came out and said, that's a dumb argument. Paul's making a dumb argument here
Yeah.
because if you think about it, and she's hearkening back to Genesis 1 at this point, the animals were created before the man.
You're right.
So, like,
Right. That doesn't make any sense.
it doesn't. So, yeah, it's silly.
Yeah. Well,
Woman,
go ahead.
do you want to go through each one of these? Because I think,
Yeah, I mean, just kind of looking at it, it's like the woman comes out of man, she's denied her natural function of birthing, right? We talked about that as a theme that might be happening as the evolution of the gods happens,
oh
right? That
yeah,
like
right.
Zeus birthing,
They're
right? At
covering
the
all
end.
this up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that
Mm-hmm.
they need to somehow how um you know scrub the divine feminine out of the text,
Right.
which
Right.
becomes difficult
Right.
when it's prevalent. But yeah,
Yeah. And just to be clear, just these are the bullet points that Tribble brings up, that the misreading. I'm just clarifying it again, that the misreading of the Genesis stories creates in the theology,
yeah,
is particularly Christian theology. So, but yeah, so there's that. And the woman is the rib of man, dependent upon him for life.
which is
Like,
not like and you now understand this connection, right?
right,
Between the rib and life, and it's not this. It's actually that's kind of a silly, I don't know, that's a silly way of thinking about it. That
right.
just because she came out of the man that she's
Yeah.
dependent on him.
Brought
And
you
it
into this
and
world.
yeah,
Take you out,
right?
right? Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and it completely misses that crucial point of that entire scene where it's about creating, not just the woman, but both the woman and now the Ish and the Isha, right?
Right.
It's both of them
The
are
male and the
new.
female, not the human
Yes.
creature, but the male and the female. Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's the creation of gendered humanity, and at that point, uh, it's a new thing.
Right,
It's not, but and they're both partakers and share in this, in the Adām, the
right,
non-gendered primordial creature. I don't know.
right. No, agreed,
So,
agreed. So this
man
kind
names
of
woman. So, and I still think, and I should probably read what Tribble has to say here, but I do still think that there's something to naming that
well,
does.
her argument is the difference between calling
Oh,
her woman and calling the name of, using that phrasing. The calling the name is the superior inferior structure.
oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, this is 223.
Yeah.
Right. So that, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. So, and I would agree. Yes. So uh,
So when he calls
that's
her
right.
Eve, when he calls her Eve, he does he call her the name, called her name Eve? Because the other
Let
one
me
is that
look.
he calls her woman, and it's not the hierarchical part, but it's
Right.
when he does exert
It's first.
superiority over her.
Yeah. It's your, yes. Vayikra Adam Shem Ishto. So yes, this is where he actually assigns the name to her
Okay.
in chapter in later in chapter 3. So and at that point I think
That's
that's
after
probably
eating of the
right.
tree, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
So that's,
so
and
it's the
that's after.
exertion of
Yes.
authority over her by calling her
Yeah.
name.
That's
Yeah.
after all the cursing too, right? That's
Uh-huh.
after the woman has been cursed and been
Yeah.
told that that the man will rule over you. It's
Right.
actually the first thing, it's the very first thing I believe the man does after God stops talking.
But that
So,
structure is
but
different than
yes. Yes, it
calling
is.
her woman, which
Yep.
means just this is woman, right? Rather
Yeah.
than, yeah, exerting authority over.
No, that's right.
Um, yep, yep.
Uh, because I got, yeah, let me just, yeah. Yes, because he says, yeah, so it's passive, right? She will be called
Mm,
Isha. He's not
yeah.
naming her at
Oh,
that
yeah.
point, right?
He's not calling
So,
her that. It's just
no,
that
he
this
says
is the way the
that's what
world
she's
is.
called. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
even more
No,
so.
it's a good point.
Yeah,
Um, Man leaves
yeah.
his father's family in order to set up through his wife another patriarchal unit. Um, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, it's just
I
all
don't
in
know.
there.
Uh,
Oh, yeah. Oh, here's the part that's the other part of your chapter. Woman tempted man to disobey, and she is
right.
responsible for sin in the world. She's untrustworthy, gullible, and simple-minded. You talked about that.
See, yeah, is she really,
But I mean,
or
this is
is
misuse, right?
she?
We're talking about.
It is. It absolutely is. Yes. Because and I think too, like this isn't. I mean, you've skimmed through my chapter. Like I think this whole idea of temptation and sin is just a misreading
Mhm,
of the, well, one of the things that I point out quite often when looking at this text is that the words that we use and translate as sin or wrongdoing or transgression uh from the Hebrew Bible, none of them appear in this text anywhere, right? And for
mhm,
good reason, because as far as the writer of this text is concerned, like I don't think the point is, oftentimes the story is presented as um it's absolutely, you have to listen to what God tells you. You have to obey the rules, right?
mhm.
Uh the woman was tricked and didn't obey the rules. And as a result, that's why we're in the mess we're in now. Everything fell apart because of that. I
Right.
just think and again, the reason we read the text that way has a lot to do with the fact that that's the way the apostle Paul read the text.
Exactly.
Uh,
A Greek
right?
reading.
Yes.
Yes, okay, we're going back to that.
Yes.
Okay, but
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
there's that other point here, which is the the knowledge part, which
Mm,
which is, I mean, come on. I mean, growing up a Southern woman too, right? And studying all the things that I have, right? Oh, well, you just know too much, right? Like the women can't teach in the church, but it's because they wanted, because she thought it would be a good idea to know about the world, right? The knowledge of good and evil, not just the good and evil part,
yeah.
but the like knowing, learning things. So,
Improving yourself,
mm,
right?
yeah, yeah, but
Picking up,
and that with learning is a downfall. So there's like, right, there's
yeah.
a lot of oppression about like not allowing women to learn to learn, which is,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, yeah, I mean, people still joke about that, right? Like
yeah,
I most of my friends and my family are still, you know, evangelical Christians. So I
mm,
mean, uh, uh, look at the look at the mess we're in, right? Ha ha
yeah.
ha. I
Knows
mean,
too
people
much
still
for their
joke
own
about this, right?
good. Yeah,
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 exactly. It's
yeah,
still very common in a lot of spaces. But again, I think this is just completely missing the point of the story. Really, what this story is about
yeah,
is, like, I think it's a way of explaining why, in broad terms, it's a way of explaining why humans are so different from animals.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
and part of this is the way, if I think if the writer were to describe what a man is within the story, he would say he's like a god, but he's not all the way there. Like he's not a god. He's like a god. And that's because that's what's going on in this story. Is there is a two-part process to
Mhm.
becoming a god. You attain knowledge and you attain immortality.
Right.
And there are two trees in the garden. Or sorry, I mean, there's lots of trees in the garden, but there's two that are specifically named, right? And it's
Mhm.
very. I just talked about this last night, so I'm I've been thinking about this. I wrote about this too in the chapter, where I point out that the tree of life is mentioned. I think it's in Genesis 2:17. There's this big chunk of text which describes the geography
Mhm.
of the Garden of Eden, right? And then it says that Yahweh God planted all the trees in the garden, and then it says, and the tree of life was there with the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then that's it. That's the last you hear about the tree of life. Yahweh God commands the man and says, you can eat from any tree in the garden except for the tree of knowledge of good and evil,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, People just assume on the basis of that instruction that people are free to eat from the tree of life. But I don't think so, because what I
Mm.
think is happening here, you'll notice the way that I work through this story, in terms of the trees, the focus becomes on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The
Right.
snake says, if you eat from it, you will become like a god, knowing good and evil. The woman
Mhm.
says, no, God said we die if we ate
Right.
from it. And she sees that it's pleasing to the eyes. There's lots of sexual innuendo and
Mhm.
imagery wrapped up here, right? In fact, this is
Right.
why, when the rabbis read this story, lots of the medieval takes on this story is that the woman actually had sex with the snake. So, um,
So weird. That's so
I
weird.
know,
What the
I
heck?
know,
It's their
but I
obsession with
think,
sex, not the what's
yeah,
written there. I'm sorry.
yeah. But
Oh
I
my
but
gosh.
I think there is still, it's very, very coy, but I still think that there's
Yeah.
something to this idea of this connection between knowledge and nakedness and human sexuality. And one of the
Yes.
reasons I think that is because I'm also reading this through the lens of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which
Mm.
repeats a lot of these themes too, right? But
Yeah.
anyways, tree of knowledge, she eats from it, she gives it to the man, and he eats from it. And the next thing it says is that their eyes were open, which I think is just so significant to this story. At this point, they know that they're naked and they feel like they have to cover up.
Mhm.
Uh, as soon as God finds out that they have covered up, he knows that they know that they're
Mm.
naked, and he makes this connection, right? He's like,
Right.
did you eat from the tree that I told you not to eat from? And then he curses them all, and he clothes them. He kills an animal and gives them skins to wear.
Mhm.
But then it says, in towards the end of the story, there's now this sudden urgency. To this point, there's been no mention of the
Right.
tree of life, right?
Right.
It's just
Right.
not been an issue. Suddenly now, Yahweh God is like, we need to get them out of the garden, because what would happen if they actually ate from the tree of life? They would become gods.
Right.
And he's stopping that from happening, because they're halfway there. All that's required now is this next step,
Right.
immortality, taking hold and eating from the tree of life. I actually think that it's not stated in the text, but I think if you're reading this carefully, and if you're thinking about the role that the tree of life plays in the text, I actually think that eating from the tree of knowledge and having your eyes opened, one of the implications from that is now the recognition that the tree of life is either there or
Mm,
that this is what will happen if you eat from the tree of life.
mm,
Oh, this is part of it, right? The
mhm,
acquisition of knowledge is gaining this understanding that this is what we now need to do in order to get all the way there. And that's why the
mm,
urgency is there too,
yeah,
because you can't keep this knowledge away from them. You can't keep this information away from them anymore. They know too much.
yeah,
But
yeah. It's
yeah,
a Babel type thing. Yeah,
yes.
yeah, they'll come too
Sorry.
close.
I
But sorry?
No, I was just apologizing because I get too excited about this text.
No, I guess don't apologize for that. I mean, like, that's why I
I'm
called you to
Canadian.
talk about all this
We
because
we
I'm like, "Oh,
apologize
that's
for
a
everything.
talk because I was just getting ready to talk about um oh, I can't remember now what it
Oh,
is.
no.
It's okay. It's fine.
I'm
It
gonna
was
apologize again.
no, yeah, 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 go ahead. I'll let you because I know it
You'll let me apologize again?
I will let
Okay.
you because I know you're Canadian and you need to.
I am,
So,
and you
yeah.
have to get these out, otherwise we
Yes.
explode.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
does. We explode into
yeah. But
a
I'm
mess
see,
of maple syrup and bacon.
I can really identify though because I am a Southern woman, so,
Is it
apologizing.
similar?
We're very
Yeah?
good at apologizing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Alright.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
So yeah, sorry. I keep interrupting, so I'm sorry.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
But yeah, no, it's the knowledge of good. I can't, it'll come back to me, or if it doesn't, it will in another conversation. That'll be fine. That'll
You'll
be
have to talk
fine.
to Vish about
No
that.
worries. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That I know. I'm really looking forward to talking to Vish as well
Yeah.
about all of this. So, yeah, and I mean, there's just so much to it, and you just see new things every time you look at it, right? It's like
Every
it's
time.
really, really, really
Every
fun.
time.
Really
So, it
fun.
is. Yeah. So,
So,
it's a fun story. This is why it's like maybe one of my favorite stories in the Bible, right? Is just
right.
because there's a million things in there.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I think too, I love that, like, I love that Phyllis Trible picked up on this so long ago, and that you got excited about this because it can be a really empowering story. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you
Yeah, it
know,
caused a lot of
and I love that
consternation
about it.
too growing up, though. I mean, right? Because if I did, that was like my first experience in a way of being kind of ostracized was, when I did talk about what I was learning uh, through books like this, right? And like, why do we always call God he? You know,
Yeah,
and just things like that. So, but I'm just really it's an one of the things that I've always wanted to do is talk a little bit more about some of these pioneers in feminist
feminist
theology. Yeah,
biblical
because
criticism and
it's amazing
theology,
what they
yeah.
did. And I
Yeah.
was really planning on doing it as a Christian, yeah, to help bring
Oh, yeah.
but I'm not
Yeah,
really that anymore, so but it still is amazing though to see how these stories all interconnect, and also now I get the benefit of learning from folks like you and Megan and Josh and about these the epic of Gilgamesh and Enuma Elish and all that. So that it's just so kind of it's just amazing, really, to see how they all interconnect. It's just, I mean, I can't think of
yeah,
a better way of saying it, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to dive in like this and see. The
absolutely.
language is amazing. I really, maybe one day I'll try Hebrew,
It
but
you know, um, we teach Hebrew,
I
Josh and I both do
know.
regularly.
I
Um,
know, I
so
know.
it's, if you ever get the urge and you're like, "That's it,"
Yeah.
you know where to go. So, I'll just
Absolutely.
say
Well,
that.
there was a time in my life where I actually considered converting to Judaism, and so I
Oh,
was looking at Hebrew, but then I was like, "Nah, that's not really that doesn't really work either for me."
yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that God anyway. Yeah, so,
Oh,
yeah,
look at
um
I
Fascinating.
was just gonna say it, like, no, I've got one guy. I've got one guy in my Hebrew class who's an ex-Mormon,
Mm,
who's learning it because he is also very interested in how he mentioned this to me, um just ahead of class this last week, that Joseph Smith apparently had started learning Hebrew, and he studied Hebrew actually for about 8 years before he was killed. And
mm,
he says that it's really remarkable if you look closely at his writing, how much his learning of Hebrew changed church theology
hmm,
in so I don't know, I think it's kind of cool, like that whole thing about Mormons going, after they die, uh being dispatched to be a god over another planet, and
correct. Yeah.
basically populate. He's like, all of that, he's like, that's straight out of Joseph Smith's Hebrew lessons. As soon as he discovered that you know God was a plural noun, and
Mhm.
that there were other deities in the Bible, he's like,
Yeah.
so it's interesting.
Fascinating. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. Yeah. So okay. So yeah, one day I will. I'll look into learning some Hebrew. I I'm hearing my dog now. He needs to
Uh-oh.
eat. So yeah,
Okay.
he's starting to bark and everything. So we probably should wrap up here.
Yeah,
And I hope we can chat again about things that we love
abso
about the Bible. How about that? Be-
absolutely.
Very good.
Well,
Very
you know
good.
me, right?
Yeah, I know. We love
So
it.
this was lots of fun, and I'm always game to talk
Sounds
about the
good.
Bible.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.